Hello, friends. Welcome back to Heartscapes, where we're learning the system of Reiki to live lives that are rooted, spacious, connected, and that help us remember ourselves. My name is Michaela. Welcome back to the studio. Well, today I wanted to continue our ongoing conversation about what it means and what it looks like and what it feels like to be trauma-informed in our Reiki practice, and to seek out practitioners who are trauma-informed when we are seeking such services ourselves. In doing so, we can collaborate on really deepening our community in the direction of being more fluid, more responsive, more safe, more trusting, and to create more opportunities for us to have consent and control in the experiences that we have along our healing journey. I think it's just a really important conversation for us to continue to have, in part because in being in the conversation and doing so compassionately and openly, we can help to demystify some of these things, make it feel a little bit less daunting, particularly for those of us who, are seeking to be trauma-informed in our practice and might be a little concerned about what that means, how to do that, what that might be asking of us, or perhaps folks who feel just kind of frozen around the topic and are hesitant to even begin. I want to soften that for us, because being trauma-informed in our practice is not an all or nothing proposition. It's not a finite destination that we arrive to someday after lots of hard work. It's a matter of making small adjustments in our mindsets, in our behaviors, in our practices, in the protocols that we implement in our practices, in our interactions, little by little, just for today, moving the dial just a tiny bit more each time we try towards that container of safety, of consent, of trust, of choice that all of us need in order to really deepen our healing experience and to, really live that life that is rooted, spacious, and connected. So, important conversation. Let's continue having it today. So what brought this up for me today is an exchange, a conversation that I had inside of one of the Reiki groups that I'm in. And this particular group is going to be hosting the Reiki Business Summit in the fall, in November, I believe. And so specifically a live, interactive online summit, specifically for people who are seeking or in the process of building their Reiki business. It's going to be lots of really wonderful resources available for anybody who's even considering doing such a thing. And so highly recommend, if that is you, that you check out the Reiki Business Summit. I'll put that information down in the description below. I was invited to present at that summit on the topic of being trauma-informed in our Reiki practice. As you know, if you've been with me on this channel for any length of time, it's something I'm very passionate about, something that I teach about, something I have a ongoing self-paced course that people can take, and something I talk about quite a bit on this channel. And so I love having the conversation. And so in the process of just sharing with the community that this summit was happening and this talk would be happening on this subject, somebody said something really interesting that was similar to other comments that I've seen before. And it really brought up in my mind the importance of making a particular distinction. And that distinction is between us as individual practitioners with our own healing journey, our own life, our own process, going through a process of healing and understanding our own trauma, which you could say is perhaps being trauma-informed in our personal practice, right? Being informed and in relationship with and in the process of working through our own personal history with whatever might be in our past that is lingering with us in ways that we might want to clear and to heal from. So being trauma-informed in our personal practice as individuals, and being trauma-informed as a practitioner in the public with clients. So in other words, having a trauma-informed practice that is public-facing. And there's some important distinctions there, even though they are certainly connected. And, the question that was posed into this group was basically, is your Reiki practice trauma-informed? And, one of the responses was, yes, I have worked through my own personal trauma and, really understand that for myself. I've gone through my own healing, and therefore I'm in a great position to support other people in their trauma healing. And there's and that can be absolutely true, right? That can be, yes, there's ways in which that statement can be 100% true. And there's ways in which it doesn't necessarily bridge to being trauma-informed generally in our Reiki practice. So I want to unpack that a little bit because I think it's a valuable distinction for us to make, particularly those of us who are seeking to be trauma-informed in our Reiki practice, and those of us as clients who are seeking to find practitioners who are trauma-informed. So just to get on the same page, just starting with what I mean when I talk about being trauma-informed in our Reiki practice, because it is a term that is used pretty broadly and is used and applied to a lot of different things that are not all exactly the same. And they can all be, or many of them can be correct ways of using the phrase, but just different from each other, distinct from each other. So when I talk about being trauma-informed in our Reiki practice as public-facing practitioners, what I mean is, firstly, having a knowledge and an acknowledgement that many people, high percentage of the population, is carrying around something in our history that is kind of inside of our body that can be triggered by outside or internal stimulus to cause us to feel unsafe, untrusting, disquieted, dysregulated, and in extreme examples, panicked, or in a full-on fight or flight expression. That most of us have something that can stimulate something along that spectrum, right? And it can be as subtle as a sense of disquiet or dis-ease that we can't quite pinpoint, all the way up to full-blown panic. So just understanding that. And then from that understanding, taking a look at the elements of our Reiki business and our practice and applying practices and protocols that can help to neutralize the fact that there is this prevalence of trauma in many of the people that will come through our door. It begins with shifting our mindsets around different aspects of our business and of our practice. Really starting with the mindset that not everybody has the same likes and dislikes that I do, right? That things that I might feel are supportive and healing and beneficial and pleasurable might actually be the opposite for other people. Secondly, an acknowledgement that we can't possibly know what of that is going to be true for everybody who walks through our door. We can't be expected to know that. We cannot be expected to create a container, a physical space, a series of protocols in our sessions that is going to be universally safe and perfectly trauma-informed for every single person who comes through the door, because we can't possibly know what is going on for each person. Therefore, if we take the first point, many folks who come through our door have something that could trigger some sense of unsafety, and that we cannot possibly know what that is going to be for everybody, and they don't necessarily know everything that's going to cause that. Therefore, we can assess and adjust how we run our sessions and how we've set up our space to account for some generalizations that are helpful. And then we can have responses that we put into place, that we've practiced, that we understand how to use in response to what happens in the moment, that can help to mitigate something that comes up that's unexpected. So that's just generally what I mean by that. Let me give some specific examples. The most straightforward one is the issue of touch. Most Reiki sessions involve some form of gentle touch. That's what's most commonly associated with a Reiki session is lying down on a table and having gentle touch applied at different points in the body. Most of us also know and have been trained that physical touch is not necessary for a Reiki session to be effective, that Reiki can be shared without any physical touch whatsoever. But the default does tend to be gentle touch. And so it can be very easy, understandable, for us as practitioners to assume that if a person comes to us for a Reiki session, that they're automatically consenting to being touched in that way, and that that's something that they're seeking, that they see as a benefit. However, that's not necessarily the case. People don't necessarily know that they can receive Reiki without touch, and so they might not know to ask for that, even if they feel a sense of disquiet about the possibility of lying down on a table, closing their eyes in a vulnerable position, and having somebody who might be a stranger touching their body. Sometimes people try out something that maybe will benefit them because they are in great need of what Reiki might offer them. And so they're willing to kind of suck up that feeling of disquiet around that question of physical touch. They might not be doing that consciously. That might all be happening for them subconsciously. And it is a tremendous relief to their nervous system if they are simply asked what they want. Would touch feel supportive for you today, or would you prefer no touch at all? Reiki can be provided equally as well either way. And they're given that opportunity to consent. They're given that opportunity to say yes or no. Perhaps it's never even occurred to them that they don't need to be touched to be in a Reiki session. And they might be like, wow, I didn't know that was an option. I would actually prefer that. Or maybe they're like, yeah, I actually would like that touch. But that act of being asked and giving consent downregulates the nervous system and allows, basically signals to your nervous system that this is okay, right? The conscious mind is choosing this, it is okay. Those are just two possible responses that might happen, right? Along a wide range of response. So that's a real common example and a very simple thing that we can do just as a matter of protocol. Every single time somebody walks in, let them know that they have this option, that neither one of those options is better or worse. They are equally good, and asking what they would actually prefer on that day. That's an example of being trauma-informed in our practice. So if we look on the other side, that other statement, that other way of being, right? Having become trauma-informed in our personal practice. So that might look like, I have, as a person, I'll just use some personal examples in a little bit of a vague way. I personally have some trauma in my past. And that's part of why I came to the system of Reiki. That's why a lot of people come to practice Reiki and other healing arts, is they have overcome something, right? They have been through some stuff. They have seen some things, and they have cultivated practices in their life that have supported them, and they want to share that with other people. That's definitely part of my story. And so there are certain, imprints that those traumatic experiences, which are in the past, are no longer current in my life. Back quite a ways, over a decade ago. But there are ways in which those experiences left an imprint on me, right? There are certain things that might happen out in the world that, remind me of those experiences and bring them back into my mind. And as really savvy, amazing, responsive, incredible creatures with incredible nervous systems and an incredible brain, we have developed many, many, many ways of navigating difficult experiences like that so that we can get through them or get out of them in the moment, and that we can kind of live our lives having experienced them. And those responses, which, the most commonly recognized one being the fight, flight, or freeze response, the way in which our nervous system responds to a threat. Those incredibly amazing systems of protection also can leave these imprints that, that can be harmful for us, that can stick with us over time. And so we then can work with those things, right? If we talk about working with our traumas, that's generally what we mean. We mean understanding how our body, our nervous system, our heart, mind, and body, and breath and voice as an integrated system, our particular map, right? Our particular internal map, and the way in which that map has been shaped by those traumatic experiences, and how we can re-navigate our internal landscape based on what we need to do that healing so that we can feel whole again. The system of Reiki is absolutely one of those practices. When I talk about we're here at Heartscapes practicing Reiki to live lives that are rooted, spacious, connected, that help us remember ourselves, this is what I'm talking about, right? A system of practice that helps us navigate and rechart, remap that internal landscape so that we can feel safe and grounded and secure and nourished again. We can feel open and spacious, like our life has possibility, right? Like there's openness, like there's possibility in the world. And we can feel connected again, first and foremost, connected to ourselves, right? Because we get disconnected from our true self, our our own self when we are holding on to those things in the past. Connected to other people, right? Of course, it's totally understandable if we've been harmed by people or experienced a lot of frightening things that we can feel a sense of disconnection from other people, a sense of connection to the world itself, right? A world which at times can feel very, very threatening. And that piece around coming back to remembering ourselves, remembering our wholeness, remembering that self that is whole and untouched and unharmed, that lives deep inside. The origins of Reiki tell us that we have a spark of life that is our true self that lives deep in the center of our belly and our hara, and that it is bright and clear and shining and whole and untouched, unharmed at all times, and that we can come back to that place. Okay. So our personal practice, our personal life being trauma informed includes taking that journey, however that looks for us, coming to understand our own landscape, coming to remap that landscape and finding the joyful, amazing, beautiful places inside of that landscape. Again, learning to navigate the scary parts of it in a way that is courageous and that, helps us to feel that we know those places also, right? Which sometimes is called doing shadow work. So all of those things, incredibly important. And for many people who are doing any kind of healing work or mentoring or counseling or, anything like that, coaching, we've done some form of that for ourselves. We certainly should have, right? We should have done some of that work at least for ourselves. And because we have done that, that does open us up to a greater sense of empathy, a greater sense of understanding, and specific tools and strategies that we can use when working with other people who are going through a similar experience. So in other words, me doing my trauma work and remapping my own landscape and learning to navigate it well absolutely helps me to show up better and more skillfully and more effectively for other people. Yeah? I can therefore better help others with their own journey much, much better than I could before I did that work, right? Before I took that journey, which, for me has been about a 14-year journey. Before I did that, I was a decent listener. I was a good friend, but I couldn't help somebody navigate a truly painful, difficult, traumatic experience, right? And there are ways in which I am better at that, more skilled at that, simply on the basis of having done that work myself. Here's where I want us to look at those two sides of the coin, two incredibly valuable sides of the coin, and say they're not exactly the same, right? One can inform the other, but they're not the same. Let me say what I mean by that. My personal journey with unpacking my own trauma has given me specific information about myself. For example, I now know that there's a particular scent that reminds me of stuff that I'd rather not remember, and it makes me feel nervous when I smell it. It's a neutral scent. It's not something that, it's not like a bad scent. It's something that's just out there in the world that people use to scent things. There's nothing wrong with it inherently, but it triggers this memory for me. And so it gives my nervous system a sense of dis-ease that then, I've learned ways of kind of calming that down. So, in my Reiki practice, I might, understand that a scent like that could be problematic. Where I need to take that, the next step that I would need to take to make my practice trauma informed, is I would need to say, okay, I understand that scent, broad category, can be something that can trigger disquieting feelings for people for reasons that I don't know. It's part of their history. I can't possibly account for every single thing that a person might be triggered by, everything single scent. Therefore, a policy, a protocol that I have in place in my practice is that I do not use scented oils or scented candles or other sorts of scented things at least that are not strongly scented, in my practice as an automatic offering. I have some things available. Sometimes it makes sense to me to offer them as an option. If something just like a particular scent seems like it might be beneficial to somebody, but it's not something that I just automatically bring into a session. Similar to touch, I don't automatically bring touch into a session. I offer it as an option and I get the person's consent. So doing my own personal healing work allows me to be with people in a way that is more sensitive to the possibility of their experience and makes me more familiar with what a person might look or sound or feel like when they are activated, or they're working through some stuff. But it doesn't necessarily cause me to structure my practice, my sessions with other people in a way that is trauma informed in the general sense. That is a next step that I have to take in order for those two things to be happening simultaneously, right? So I hope I'm making sense in making this distinction, because I do see comments like this frequently, and without having a more in-depth conversation with the person, which sometimes I get to have, which is always fascinating, I don't necessarily know which one of those they mean, right? Because if somebody says, I have done my own trauma work and therefore I am well equipped to help somebody through their own trauma, again, that might mean that that person's more sensitive, more aware of how a person might be feeling. They might be more resilient when somebody is in a difficult place. It doesn't necessarily mean that they've structured their practice in a way that is trauma informed in the general sense. It might, right? They might have taken those next steps, right? Because they might have gained that sensitivity that, because there's certain scents or touch or sounds or, other elements in the room that I know I am sensitive to. Therefore, it's a good idea if I make adjustments to take that into account for other people. They might have done that, but not necessarily, right? The two are not the same, okay? So that's just kind of what I wanted to flesh out here. I see the comments like that commonly enough that it just seems like it's a distinction that's important to make. Both, again, for people who are Reiki practitioners or practitioners of similar arts, and for those who are seeking a trauma-informed practitioner, right? If that is you, if you want to work with a practitioner that is trauma-informed, and they make a comment like that, ask a few more questions, right? Like, okay, great. So what are the protocols? How do you structure your sessions in a way that are trauma-informed, so that I can see if it's going to be a good fit for me, right? The last thing I want to say, and this is a point that I often make, but sometimes don't, sometimes I forget, so just wanted to bring it in there, is that we get to balance and we get to decide as practitioners what modifications we make in our practice and what modifications we do not make in our practice in order to be more trauma informed. Back to what I said at the very beginning, is that this is a, responsiveness. It's about taking small shifts and taking small actions little by little just for today to make more spaciousness, more safety, more trust, more opportunities for consent and control by our clients. It's not a one size fits all. There's not one way that a trauma-informed practice looks by any means. It's really more about awareness and consciousness and making decisions consciously about these elements. So there are things that we get to decide. Do I want to make this shift in my business or do I not? Right? So for example, for some people, using scented oils or using crystals or using sound, drumming, other sound tools, that is important. That is essential to how they run their business, how they offer their sessions. And those aren't going to be things that they're going to compromise. They are going to use scented oils because that is part of how they have crafted their sessions, and it's important to them. And they have genius and experience and knowledge with those oils that are skilled, right? And that are designed to enhance the session. And therefore, that's not going to be negotiable. That's not going to be an option. It's going to just be part of the session. That's totally fine. In those cases, it's important to simply make that transparent and make sure people know that on the front end, right? In your marketing, in how you talk about your sessions, just including that information that this is going to be part of a normal session so that people can make informed decisions, right? So I think that's plenty. That's plenty for now. I hope that was a useful distinction to make, both for practitioners and clients. I would love to continue having this conversation with you. So please share your questions, your comments, your own experiences down below. Do you agree with me that there is a distinction between being trauma informed in our personal life and being trauma informed in our Reiki practice that is public facing? I would love to know. And if you are a person who is or would like to build a Reiki business, I really encourage you to check out the Reiki Business Summit, which will be coming up in November. I believe enrollment is either open now or it will be open very, very shortly. So I will put links for that down below. Check it out. You will hear more on this topic from yours truly, as well as a number of other amazing practitioners speaking on a lot of different topics. So check that out. And as you go through your day, as you move from here into whatever this beautiful day has for you, may you be deeply provisioned for whatever lies ahead. Thanks so much for joining me. I love you. Goodbye.